Alan, we've been trying to do this thing for a while, so it is good to see you, man. How are you?
Yeah, likewise. Doing great, man. Yeah, glad to finally be talking to you in that padded noise canceling room. I'm sure that's what those pads are for.
That is. It's actually a closet, but it's been converted for this for this purposes. Hey, Alan, you're a busy man, so glad you took time to do this. I have a little thing I call my Uber driver index in my life. It's a good indicator of. So this is how it goes. Once my Uber driver starts telling me about something, whether it's like, hey, buy Nvidia or buy Bitcoin, that's my sign to sell. That's my sign that, okay, this thing is in mania because, right, Uber drivers, particularly in San Francisco, they're hearing all of this thing. I'm like, we're in full hype mode. Multiple Uber drivers have pitched me their AI startups. And so I'm starting to think that maybe we are in peak AI. How would you react to that?
Yeah, I think the more interesting thing about peak AI hype is that it essentially is getting refreshed every
Mm.
3 months or so. We all decide oh my God, this thing can now generate a podcast for me. All I have to do is type in the notes and it'll now generate a podcast. And then a few months later, Anthropic says, well, we have a tool that can run your whole computer for you. And 18 months ago, we were all just excited that the computers can talk back to us. So, yeah, it's an interesting, you know, way of saying we're in a peak AI hype for sure, right? But I think it's constantly getting refreshed and new standards are getting set so quickly that it's hard to just say we're kind of right in the middle of the peak AI hype.
Yeah, I've kind of changed my mind on that topic recently, and I think we are not even close to the peak. I think there might be a lull, but I think it's not dominating our lives enough. This isn't just some technology, two technologists just sort of like the implications in real life haven't been discussed enough in the legal realm, right? And what a human is like. There's this other conversations we are not having at all. I mean, you've got Doge saying they're going to use AI to find government inefficiencies. Like I think like we may be at peak hype in the technology world per se, but the rest of the world, I don't think we're having the conversations I was hoping we would have already had about what's to come. But I think it's a good perspective of saying even just calling it AI, right? It's we had a thing and it was all about I can have a conversation with a bot, good conversation with the bot, and we're so beyond that now. The hypes are completely different right now.
Yeah, it's you know how much of our work, how much generative AI is kind of finding its way into my day to day life. For instance, right, I'm hitting this brick wall in some kind of architecture challenge, and I want to have you know always available assistant that is never getting annoyed with my weird ideas, right? So I,
Right.
I, I want to have a back and forth conversation with AI to help me get over a brick wall or to help me come up with some kind of new creative solutioning idea, things like that, right? But we're not seeing that proliferate yet through the average Joe, right? Like how is the average Joe that's going about his day to day going to find AI kind of in his life in a way that is actually impactful, right? So many of us are trying to build things that make sense in the flow of business work and business applications, or um, hobbyists like you and I are, building things, around our house just to see something cool happen, but yeah, in the ways it starts to show up for the average Joe and their, in Siri and their Amazon Alexa assistants and Google assistants and things like that, right? Or
And to that point, let's double click into that, right? So I'm not a technologist. I am just, you started to go there. I want you to double click into that a little bit of, help me imagine how this makes my life better. Let's just assume I'm a knowledge worker, or I'm an accountant, what have you. What do you see as how this makes my life better?
yeah, from a thinking about it from a knowledge perspective, it kind of goes back to what I was saying a little bit ago, where I'm hitting writer's block and trying to create new content,
Mm,
or
yeah.
I'm in a a regulated industry where we've got new policy coming in, and it's not really a creative task, but is still a relatively mundane task, right? Someone from up high is telling someone down low that this knowledge article needs to exist, and here's the details of the knowledge article. Take those details of the knowledge article from that guy from up high, draft the knowledge article, have the knowledge worker validate, right? So instead of that knowledge worker taking an hour out of their day to, craft a relatively, mundane bit of knowledge that needs to proliferate through their systems, have AI create the first draft. You go validate it, right? I think that like that pattern of, you know, give me the first draft and kind of use the rest of my time for the things that I know my tribal knowledge has useful information to contribute to it.
Yeah, we're just getting started. I want to turn the attention to Salesforce only because they are ubiquitous, and you are becoming. And we'll get to that here later. Synonymous with that brand, even though I know you are in all kinds of other technologies. So let's rewind. Let's go back a little bit in time here. Everyone was worried about Salesforce. Hell, I was worried about Salesforce. It's like Wall Street was worried about Salesforce. I want to let me first go back. I don't know how long ago that was. Feels like it was 2 years ago. While all of this was happening, what was coming out of Salesforce's mouth seemed like stalling to me, just to be frank. It seemed like, this thing is scary. They had Matthew McConaughey in the middle of the wilderness, just freaking everybody out on some ayahuasca trip or something. I was like, what is going on? The first place I'm going to go with you is, while that was going on, you and a small team at Slalom, not Accenture, Deloitte, uh, were able to do what I would say what Salesforce couldn't do at the time. You put Gen AI solutions in production with some massive brands on Salesforce. How did that happen? I bet there is a great backstory there. How did that happen?
Yeah, a really sleepless weekend is how that happened. But go back a few years in the way our little business inside Slalom was operating. We've been building conversational AI for a lot, 5, 6 years or so leading up to that point, right? So all of the things that we had hoped and dreamed of building chatbots and capabilities that we had hoped AI would eventually get to, all of a sudden we're there, right? November 2022, somewhere in there, ChatGPT hits the public domain, and I logged into it on Friday and was like, my whole business plan needs to get lit on fire right now. And it did, right? Like we lit it on fire at that point. Our pipeline dropped to zero, and no one wanted to talk traditional chatbots anymore, right? So that Friday, me and my old business partner with that conversational AI chatbots team, Mark Miller, if you're watching, Mark, him and I kind of took the 5 or 6 things that we knew ChatGPT would struggle with in the enterprise. The concept of bringing generative AI into business applications would not be okay if, I share my policy information about my company, and then all of a sudden company B is able to, or, read my company policy, right? We needed to ensure data is not shared. We needed to ensure there's a layer of trust between the user and the AI system, and only using it for, certain points, things like that. So yeah, it ended up being a 72-hour weekend where I didn't sleep much and had the kind of first version of of the framework on Monday. And me and Mark took a look at it and was like, yeah, we need to go talk to everyone about this immediately.
So, but it didn't stop there though. I,
No.
I think as someone who's worked at IBM and some of these bigger shops, you could dream all that all day long. How did you then go from that to a Fortune whatever company putting this thing into production?
Yeah, I have a lot of thanks to give a Slalom for letting me kind of run with this dream of building an R&D. We call ourselves the innovation hub these days. So it's kind of started there with the framework, and took it to my bosses at Slalom and was like, I know this feels weird, but I promise there's money here. And they're like, we believe you, go try. So yeah, we just kind of took our shot, built our go-to-market decks and talk track, and ran a story 100 different ways and tore it down 100 different ways, and went back to the Pixar story arc and wrote our story following that Pixar story arc. And yeah, it's kind of all is history now, right? We're about 18 months into that, and we've deployed for about 15 clients now.
Wow. Tell me some of the down moments. Tell me about a day when you're like, you had either post or during production where you were like, what have I done here?
Yeah, I think in some of the first iterations, now those that are kind of close to this in the business apps world are hearing things like retrieval augmented generation, RAG, is kind of like the big keywords for how to do this right in the enterprise. And in the first iterations of the framework, we had hoped that that would be the answer. We didn't know that was going to be we didn't know that was going to be the answer, right? Back then we thought it was going to be I'm going to have to submit some crazy expense to Slalom for fine tuning a model for this client and figuring out if it's going to work that way. We thought that fine tuning might have to be the right thing at first, or RAG, or combination keyword search and semantic search and fine tuning and all of these things. So I think the big oh no moment was working through the first concept of RAG in the framework back in, I don't know, March of 2023, before it was kind of well established that RAG was going to be kind of the enterprise way of grounding generative AI in your enterprise truth. We had did it without vector databases. For anyone that we tried it without vector databases. We tried to build a RAG pipeline with kind of typical Salesforce knowledge, some fuzzy matching, keyword searching, and other ways of kind of bringing it all together to ground our prompt in that enterprise truth. And we saw decent results, but as we started to scale and saw people hundreds of people a day coming in and looking through those, it was that much better than traditional chatbots. So yeah, I think that was probably the moment where I was like, uh-oh,
What have
maybe,
we
yeah, what have we done? Why did we put this out? Yeah.
what have we done here? Let me ask you a personal question. What is a purchase under $50 that has been the most impactful to your life, recently?
Besides the first $50 I spent on generative AI tokens, there's this book that I was pointed to. Honestly, I can't even remember the name of it. It was about extending your cognition, essentially. This $30 machine learning kind of philosophy, but it's not even about machine learning, but a super alignment guy at one of the big startups recommended the book, and it's essentially unlocked this idea in my head that humans would have been entirely stupid if we didn't have the ability to interact with each other and take notes. And right, if humans would have been born in a cave and the only thing you ever knew about that cave, the only thing you ever knew was what's inside that cave, you're going to be a pretty dumb human, right? Unless
Right,
you can come
right.
up with some kind of clever mnemonic to keep reminding yourself about things that you've learned. Yeah, it was a really interesting kind of philosophical unlock for the mind we're trying to get artificial intelligence to, and where the gap is right now, right?
That's
Is
cool.
that kind of cognitive
Yeah,
extension of yourself, right?
I will get the name of that book from you, and we'll put it in the notes for our listeners. Let's get back to what you are starting to be known for recently. Someone described you to me, and someone that I would protect the innocent, as the smartest architect on the Salesforce platform. I was like, yes, that's true, but where is this going? Are you trying to steal this guy? Um, Alan, you've been at this for a while now and doing your thing, and you had a small group of cult following, and you're now in this moment where that, there's lots of your name has been mentioned in sort of many circles, within the Salesforce ecosystem, especially. You are heads down, get your job done. I've known you for many years. How are you taking all of this then in? Do you make your family line up for autographs every Friday night? How are you processing all the attention?
Yeah, I come from very humble beginnings for sure, and to your point, I'm heads down most of the time. I don't think I'm the smartest one for sure. I love being able to share things with my family of look, I'm on this jumbotron out at this conference, or look, I was in this commercial, and just kind of spreading that. My message is getting spread, my name's getting out there, my family's super happy for me, and doing that kind of stuff humbles me even more every time. There's not a single part of me that leads up to going on some keynote stage that I'm not, shaking in my boots. But I love doing it. I love getting out there and meeting people and talking in front of people. It's great.
Well, having two daughters will humble you every single day because they
100%.
they do not care that you're a big deal in this world.
100%. Yeah.
Let's get back to the conversation about how generative AI specifically, what it did to CRM and in Salesforce, an ecosystem you and I know very well. Wall Street was very skeptical of Salesforce's response to AI. You were very skeptical. Has it now changed that there is this agent force thing? Is this hype? No one is listening, just a couple thousand people. You can just be real with me here. Is this a real thing?
Percent. Yeah, 100%. I think maybe even more so than most people, I've been very skeptical of Einstein GPT slash Einstein AI slash Agent Force for a long time. Right. Agent Force is a game changer. Honestly, it's so real. The platform is becoming so ubiquitous across the Salesforce
Why?
platform.
Why,
Yeah.
Alan? Everyone's got Copilot. Everyone's got a fin. What got you convinced on this one?
Yeah, it was the Dreamforce. We're going out to Dreamforce this year. Me and a member of my team went out a few days early and got I've been to 7, 8 Dreamforces and have never once seen this kind of early release access to pre-generally available code on the platform, right? So we went to the session for a full day, and Salesforce basically told all of us, engineers and architects, like, here's the code, right? Here's Agentforce. No one has access to it yet. No one's seen it. You're kind of like the first group of people to see it. And I got to spend a whole day hands-on writing new code that leverages the Agentforce platform. I actually built the first version of the Agentforce service API at that boot camp. So like being able to see so quickly in one day how ubiquitous Agentforce is throughout the platform and how core it is to kind of like the pivoted message and like architecture of the core Salesforce platform, it was like an immediate unlock for me that like this is real. It's not just a fluffy buy this SKU and you get this one little kind of unique turnkey solution. No, it was clear that it had been kind of ingrained into everything, was actually starting to get ingrained into everything, right? Everything from standing up your new fields and building formula fields to I want to bring in whatever generative AI open source model from Hugging Face I want into this platform is there, right? Like that's such a like wide range of capabilities just in those kind of like those 2 points, and then inside of that you've got, our clients that do want to buy the turnkey solutions and I want the whole service bundle, and here's the whole service bundle. But a platform strong enough to build new products on top of, right? Like that's the kind of thing that I'm always looking for in Salesforce, right? Like I don't like turnkey admin stuff, right? I'm a dev, I'm a nerd, and I want to build stuff, and I want to, when someone tells me Salesforce can't do this thing, my favorite, I love those people because I'm like, hold my beer.
I
I've seen the Salesforce platform do some crazy things in the last decade plus, but Agentforce is probably the biggest holy crap unlock for me from Salesforce.
so to that point, what I hear from executives all of the time is they want optionality, right? So they're constantly getting hit with every one of their vendors is like, buy this thing, this Copilot, buy this, buy that, buy all of these things, and they're like, I just want optionality. I want a little bit of the where it makes sense. I'm going to double click into this, but I want to drag, drop, and have my buffet of options and put this all in. How do you and I guess your team think about this when you interact with them through that innovation hub you were talking about?
Yeah, this is an evolving perspective for sure because a lot of the clients we talk to are still pretty immature in their path forward, right? Agent Force is still very new. It's still very, relatively new to slalom, and we need to get kind of everyone to 101 first, and then start talking about the elevated patterns, right? So those clients that we are talking about, those more elevated patterns, it's it's more around the focus of like the foundational pieces your enterprise needs to be able to do AI in your business apps ecosystem with the tools you have without a system overhaul. Like those are kind of the 4 big things that come up, right? So optionality is great, but there's still a lot of kind of traditional operational challenges with building new CRM apps or building new middleware or building new OMS, right? Like all of those challenges don't just go away because now we have this fancy new AI thing, right? But starting with the right foundations in the platforms that your enterprise is going to continue to use is a more important decision than I really want my HR agent to save this cost right now,
That makes
right? Like
sense.
the whole
Yeah.
world is so focused on autonomous agents and kind of that new path, right? But there's still a lot to be done in most enterprise clients with kind of the foundations, right?
Yep. If you're just joining, I am chatting with Allen Mann. We are waxing poetic about AI and a few other topics. I want you to look out in the future a little bit for me if you can. I lived through the dot-com era, turning to mobile, etc. I think we are in that kind of a moment. I think you would agree. Like, the
100%.
future is where we're in one of those big sort of moments. And, I like to gamble, buy stocks and lose a lot of money or get some money. And so I was like, man, if you were alive in the 90s, what companies would you buy? What companies would you short? So I want to bring this conversation back to Salesforce and CRMs in general. Let's sort of widen it. I would argue from a business perspective, the bull thesis for it has been that, man, these old applications we used to have were a pain in the ass to use from a UI perspective as the end user. It was also a pain in the ass in the administrative section as well, right? Like it was just this clunky thing. And so there's a lot more. I'm oversimplifying. But here comes this new world where changes in the back end and usability on the front end increasingly easy. Now, fast forward to what you just said around what's now happening now. My default is to be bearish on what got us here, right? And that this same company, and specifically Salesforce, hits bull case for the next 10 years, right? Like grow, evolve, or die has to be something else like that. Because and the reason I'm saying that is, let me just put the user hat on. If you're telling me that most of my interaction is going to be with a bot, with technology, right? To create the idea, to help me edit it, then the UI I need is the best UI for me to either textually or orally have a conversation with this, not where the screens are. All that then leads me to, how are you thinking about this conversation about, man, got this giant investment into this thing. How do I ensure myself that the utility and the value of it is still the same 10 years from now?
Mm. Yeah, I don't know that I have that answer for sure.
On.
And coming back and listening to this podcast in 6 months and wanting to slap myself across the face for sure. No, I like looking back at the last 2 years that I can kind of bucket into a little bit of a retrospect and maybe predict out the next couple of years is probably the best I can do from the perspective of like all the pieces that are going to be needed that are needed today to make the next frontier of generative AI useful in the business is a bunch of messy, scattered architectural components, right? You need prompt engineering and RAG and LLMs and some predictive modeling and a UI to surface it in and automations in your CRM to trigger them and to incorporate them with. It's messy, right? The Agentforce platform is a great way of kind of organizing that mess, suite of tools to like help you kind of organize that mess. I don't see the mess going away is I think the point, right? Like there's even some of the first sparks of AGI that we've seen. It's not going to be a couple lines of really clean code and like, here's AGI, right? Here you go. It's going to be this messy, scattered plot of all the things that a general intelligence or a business general intelligence in something like Agentforce is going to need access to all kinds of messy operations and things, right? Until as we're cleaning it up or as we let AI help us clean it up, I guess. So looking to the next couple of years of like how businesses will start to, I think, evolve more to exposing useful generative AI is going to be tools like Slack or I think we're even seeing, I forget the name of there's a new app exchange product that Salesforce just released, the Salesforce Labs team just released. I've always called it liquid displays. Is kind of how I've bucketed it. We've got a bunch of prototypes of this idea where you issue a general thought of what you want to do in your CRM, and let generative AI create lightning web components in a form and like organize them in a layout. And now you've got a layout that you can interact with that's entirely created from AI, right? Salesforce Labs is starting to work on some of that. So I think a lot of it's going to start moving to that, right? We start to like compartmentalize the mess, the architectural mess behind a natural, easy to use UI, like talk now, right? Click this button and give it kind of your whole narrative and all of the information that you want that engagement to have about your request, and let it do its thing, right? And show you the things that are most pertinent to that thing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think to your point, I love your comment about the mess. That continues to be one of the things I think lots of people get wrong, that there's an easy button for any of this stuff. That all your bad hygiene around data, right, around how you're organized, is going to be miraculously cured with this thing. No, no, no. Now we've
A
got,
lot of traditional problems to solve.
yeah, we've got godlike tools that can help you get there faster technologically, but the rest of your mess still needs to be cured. I want to go to my area now. On the one hand, I am flattered that most of the energy around Gen AI is in my service area. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all the attention I'm getting from.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon either.
Yeah, like it's the epicenter. And you know what, Alan, you and your ilk, we are thankful you're here. On the other hand, when I go look at the fine print of all of these solutions, including this agent force, right? They all lead you to an ROI calculator that ends in, hey, Amos and you people in service, you need less people. Like, and our mutual friend Bob Furness is like, oh, this isn't happening, humans are safe. I would then ask you, is Bob drinking copium? Like, what are you and this technology's intentions for the world of service?
Yeah, I think we can edit this a little bit, right? In
Of
case
course. Of course.
I think the general safe thought that is out there is AI doesn't eliminate jobs, and that's just bullcrap.
Of course it is.
It's just not wrong. It's right is wrong, right? When you start to quantify something like we're reducing speed to resolution or average handle time in service, is easy to do math that says we no longer need to go hire these 10 people we were thinking about next year. Or, sweet, we can reduce by 10%. Maybe these people can do something else in the company, or they're not part of the company anymore, but that's the fact of the matter, right? The brightness of this, right? The light side of this is that those that are getting in now are transforming their service desk job, their contact center operations job in ways that they may not be fully aware of yet. There's this wonderful moment that I see in lots of people that I talk to in all kinds of different jobs. The unlock, that light bulb moment, is a little different for everyone, but when that happens, it really does start to transform people. And I don't wish anyone upon anyone the sleepless nights that I have and the very unhealthy relationship that I have with my work. But when that unlock happens, you kind of can't let it go, right? It's like the only thing you can think about. And we start to see inside of clients' organizations, especially in service, when a service knowledge worker gets that unlock, we start to see how they transform the next steps for their organization in a much bigger way than they may have thought that their role allowed them to in the past, right? Um, Automating repetitive work and focusing on the creative and the strategic things, like all of these things are like kind of the fluffy elevator pitch for generative AI. But as you start to see someone that is not scared about AI taking their job and is actually embracing AI to help them transform their job, that when that unlock happens, they can make a real difference inside their business. And that's what I think everyone should focus on and not worry about. The fact is, you can quantify reduction in jobs and things like that for AI. But for those of us that are getting in early and helping our businesses transform, you're not going to have to worry about your.
Yeah. And Alan, I think that was a beautiful answer. One of the retorts I always give is, well, who's safe, right? The pharmacist, a developer. You're talking to a guy who, right, started as a dev and then left and went and did other things. And so I've always kind of described myself as a pretty below average dev. Well, well, I've written more code in the last year than I have 10 years prior. Like really, really, really good stuff. Some of it I don't even know what it means. I'm just changing the parameters. Like, because I'm not
That phrase of like, I know just enough to be dangerous is becoming so much more of a dangerous phrase.
like I started out doing it the right way. I started out where I would at least like invest a few hours in learning the language. Then I would use it as an aid, and then after a while, I'm like, well, you know what? I know enough languages, from way back to where I don't really care. Bring it to me, write it for me. I'll go in and change. But I bring that up to go like, if you're a dev, you're in trouble. Not you're in trouble. You're in trouble if you put your head in the sand. Like if you're a doctor, if you are, it doesn't matter who you are. So I think it just so happens the service area happens to be the epicenter of where it is starting. And what I say to clients is I'm gonna get you the savings. What you do with the savings is really up to you. Like that's not my job as someone who is helping you and giving you advice or helping you build something. It's okay, yes, there's now 20% less human time. Spend that human time using outreach. Don't backfill. Eliminate. That is you.
Yeah, we actually we one of our first client, the first big AI use case client, when we started to see those kind of quantified cost savings coming back, like we helped them articulate this whole plan of turning their contact center into a new sales center, essentially, right? Like
Awesome.
they're helping close bookings, not resetting passwords and adding new accounts to their portals or changing rooms and things like that, right? Like their contact center is now spent generating revenue, upselling, selling new bookings, upgrading their rooms and upgrading their restaurants and
That's
things like
awesome.
that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's up to you. Only have a couple more for you. What excites you right now? Like right here and right now, what is the thing that is like personally or professionally that is exciting you right now?
Personally or professionally.
Yeah, that you're working on, you know.
Yeah. Well, um, I would be in a big fight with my wife. I didn't say personally. I'm really excited to be working on raising my daughters.
Good save.
I
Good,
am I am
good,
very
good save.
excited to be no, love my kids for sure. We're working on right now. I think the the agentic world is here and it's materializing as agents and agent force and autonomy and all of these things. I'm staring at my hobby machine over here that when I get off work, I usually go sit down and go back to work over there. And I'm working on things like trying to build agentic personal solutions with like my Google Assistants and other home automation that I have. I want my own Jarvis. I actually just bought one of those. Moss, you and I are probably going to have a whole another nerd session about this, but I just bought one of those like fan hologram projector things. I found a programmable
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I wanna try and build my own little like hologram Jarvis and have those kind of just all over my house so that I can
It's awesome.
tell it to do my things.
That is awesome. I just bought the name's gonna escape me, but it's for your curtains. Not cheap, but complete game changer, man.
Oh man, yeah,
Like,
I've got the drop shade ones. So
okay.
you're getting the ones that like move your actual curtains.
Yeah, drop shit. Maybe I would be cheaper.
Nope,
Maybe I
nope,
should.
not
No,
cheaper.
okay. All right.
I spent so much money on those.
On the drop shit. All right. So definitely. So maybe I'm getting up. But yeah, so it's programmable because my pattern is like for me to sleep, I have to put on a mask. Any little bit of
Mm,
light and the sleep is over, curtains. But then as soon as I wake up, I want the opposite.
yeah,
Like I want
give me all the vitamins.
give me all the lights and hit my retina. So that's cool. We're gonna have to nerd out about that. What have you changed your mind on recently?
Ooh, what have I changed my mind on?
While you're thinking, I'll buy you some time. Mine is around this topic of AI. I went from, my God, if another person talks about AI again, it's getting so cliche. And then I got out of our bubble and went into like the real world. I was like, oh my gosh, we are not talking about AI enough. Like there is and I think the reason I've changed my mind on that is what I'm worried about is I don't want, no matter how smart these people are, a handful of people to sit in a dark room and have conversations on how we utilize this technology in all kinds of areas, right? It impacts every part of our lives, right? Politics, education, all that, our kids, on and on and on and on, especially as we are getting more godlike powers. And so I'm like, it just needs to be in a digestible format. But I'm like, no, 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 no. Society is not talking about what is coming up enough is one thing that I've changed my mind on. So what about you?
Yeah, I still feel like I still need some time. I think probably the most recent like big change for me was, it's funny because we were just talking about like the transforming. I'm still a developer. Honestly, I have a lot of passion in opening up a code editor and writing something new, right? It makes me feel like I'm building something fresh out of my head, starting from scratch, creating something new. And recently, I think I kind of got over the hump of being okay with having AI create that initial framework for me, right? Like it
Mm,
being able to like let go of the idea that I need to be the one writing the first few hundred lines of code because it's my idea and I want it to be like in the way that, I'm thinking about it. Instead, focused on the most clever ways to ask AI to help me build that initial framework with
mm.
my uniqueness and goals in mind. Don't write the whole thing for me. There's things that I want to like trial and error as I'm building this out, but I know that I'm going to need kind of this framework, right? I don't need to write traditional JavaScript and HTML anymore, right? The real power of using AI. It's funny, me and my wife were just talking about, she wants me to teach my daughters how to code. And I'm like, that's just, it doesn't make sense anymore, right? To teach them like, sure, 10 years ago, if she was, 12 years old, like here's a C sharp book and let's start learning C sharp. But now it's more humans that are AI engineers, right? We're building new applications with AI, need to be really good at articulating the problems you have or understanding the steps to solve specific problems or how to unpack what an algorithm actually is or how to unpack what this next data stewardship job actually is, right? You need to be able to clearly articulate that like you're sitting here talking to a human and then ask for the thing that you want AI to do, right? Like, here are my problems. Here's the new algorithm I want to build. Here's how I'm thinking it should be built. Give me a starting place kind of thing. So I think that's probably been like the biggest change for me recently is like more and more so I'm using AI to kind of create the initial frameworks and blueprints for new things that I'm building.
Yeah, yeah, I can connect with that for sure. As someone who loves to write, like I write and write and write and write and write and write, and it took me a while to get there too, to where I don't want AI doing my writing at all. Like it just kills me. Like I just can't. But can it help me? I am terrible at spelling when I am typing. Can it help me along the and then building this co-working relationship, which sounds kind of odd, but like I found my kind of sweet spot. Whereas my pattern was, I don't want you touching any of my writing at all. Like, do not go there. And I've evolved on that now.
Yeah, I mean, that's it though, right? Like that's the one of those unlocks that we were talking about earlier that we see in a lot of people is things like that, right? Finding the right way in the flow of work about the thing that you care about is the way to find value in AI, right? Whether it's your personal journey or inside of, a client that we're talking to, finding a way for the people that are going to be using these tools for it to be natural in their flow, right? Not upheaval, a restructuring of their entire
Everything they
process of
do.
doing this thing, and everything that they do is you're going to fail, right? With adoption challenges and all things like that, right? Start slow, get it in the flow of their work. And same thing with you and us, right? Like getting it as that kind of friend that is never asleep and always willing to entertain your chaos.
Your chaotic deal. The very last question I'm going to leave you with to answer is, I suspect you didn't show up to career day with the hoodie and say, I'm going to be a badass architect one day. So I would love you to share a little bit, and you hinted around it a little bit, how you got here, particularly for those who are listening. Again, the obvious path is, you go to some fancy school, you do the thing, and then you end up becoming Allen one day. I know enough about you to know that wasn't your path at all. So would love for you to share a little bit about, for people who are listening who are sort of like, how did Allen get here? And maybe your story might inspire some folks.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. My story is it is not very traditional to the path of of technology for sure. I came from I went to this very strange high school in Minnesota, that the School of Environmental Studies, if anyone is ever looking into that. And one of the great things about that school that I think set me up for the success that I'm experiencing now is in those early, 11th, 12th grade years, that school teaching me how to kind of be my own person and get us ready for college. Like they put us in like these little like cubicle type things, right? And like our whole day at school was like in this cubicle, and like your teachers were kind of like your bosses, and like they would give you your assignment and
Huh.
check in on your assignments, and there was no like standardized testing. Like it was all writing assignments and research projects and things like that, right? Coming out of that school, and immediately I went to college a little bit, dabbled in some things. My best grades were in my snowboarding class. So I knew that I didn't know what path I was going to be on yet. I didn't know that it was going to be a technical path at that point, right? I knew that I wanted to make money. So I went to try and make as much money as I could. I got into sales. I sold appliances and televisions for a number of years until I realized how much more money I could make by selling cars. So I went and sold cars for a bunch of years. And then I was sitting in my office at my dealership one day, and my boss had said something to me like, "Don't you want to have like my Corvette one day?" And he was driving this like old, beat down, ugly yellow Corvette. And he said that to me. I went, sat down in my office, was like, "No, I don't." And I got up and left, and I never went back. I never went back to car sales. And I applied I applied like Best Buy's Geek Squad. I don't know what it was at that moment. I was like, I want to get into like tech. I want to like go help remove viruses, and like I knew how to write HTML code. And I was a hobbyist developer, and I had been like I was selling MySpace HTML code to kids in like junior high, like so like that was kind of always there, right? But I had never really materialized it in any kind of like professional path. And at that moment, I decided to. So I got into Office Depot and their like Geek Squad desk, removing hard drives and viruses and building new computers and things like that. And took a shot at a civil engineering software firm here in Texas as an estimator's assistant, basically like tech support for like bridge jobs and things like that. And that really started to get me into like, whoa, there's a lot in this
Right.
ecosystem that I could get into. And then one day my boss was like, "Hey, we bought this thing called Service Cloud and no one here knows it. Do you know it?" And I'm like, "No." Like, "Well, I need you to go know it." All right, cool. Yeah. So yeah, at the time I was digging in C sharp, like I was in C sharp boot camps. I'd paid a bunch of money to go to some like, virtual nano micro degree C sharp .NET course, and loved it. So, I was actually preparing myself to be a video game developer. And like when we started getting into Service Cloud, and like I saw the like ecosystem of Salesforce architects and engineers, you put that up next to a entry level video game developer at Ubisoft, a lot more money on this side. So I went that. Yeah, and I think the rest is history. After I kind of did that first Service Cloud implementation, I loved it. This is classic days, and like KCS was kind of just getting started, and like we spun up a whole KCS team inside that org, and yeah, I started taking certs and learning Apex and learning LWC. A lot of the things that I had learned from C Sharp translated really well, and I had built WordPress sites and things like that. Yeah, yeah, that's
Wow.
that.
Wow. Wow. I learned some things I didn't know about you then. Alan, this has been a treat. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to post Alan's LinkedIn in the show notes if you guys want to go reach out to him. Thanks for spending about an hour with us today. This has been awesome.
Thanks, Moss.